What do you find is the most underdeveloped range of motion in athletes? Like what movement is most restricted in high-level athletes, in your experience? Is there one that stands out? Shoulders, any particular other joints?
Well, it all depends on their speciality, of course, and habits. The shoulder, the glenohumeral joint, is the most hypermobile joint in the body. Even when it's restricted, it still offers tremendous range of motion compared to other areas. But when it's restricted, even if it's just a little bit, it can cause huge problems because we are dependent on that range of motion and mobility around the glenohumeral joint. And the simple reason is because with the hands, humans manipulate.
Yes.
That's what we're meant to do with our hands. And we need that complexity around the scapula. It's been a few years since I've said it first, that the scapula craves complexity. But this complexity around the scapula and range of motion is so important across the board.
I've read of your concept of isolate, integrate, and improvise. Can you describe the role of improvisation in movement?
Any profession, any specialty should arrive at improvisation in the top tier, the top level. Whether you play the violin or you box, you're going to reach improvisation. Improvisation, above all, is the human condition. It's the human ability. The highest form of living is improvisation. You improvise. Basically, life is improvisation. You're born, you die, and in between, you improvise. A shitload of improvisation. Movement is no different. The thing is, people started to isolate concept, and some people went the next level and integrated them. They present themselves as improvisation, but actually they're cheating people. It's just a bit more integration yet. It's just another integration. Improvisation, open improvisation, real improvisation as we call it, that's very rare, and that's the most enjoyable state. It's also called the zone. It's also called the tunnel. You just experience this beautiful thing, to be empty, just to let things happen through you. As Bruce Lee said, I don't hit, it hits.
Interview related to that, a very interesting point that many people in the U.S. in particular focus on learning more than doing. So focus too much on acquiring knowledge versus using that knowledge. Do you struggle with this yourself? Like, how do you approach learning new things versus putting more time into old things that you've already mastered?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's not only a US thing or a North American thing. It's generally all across the globe, although there are more practical people and less practical people, and each country has its own orientation, habits, characteristics. But it's a good question. You need to be, it's kind of being super intelligent and oriented towards the information, but then have this dumbed down practical mind. It's like, okay, no, I need to work, and having a balance across that. And that's probably means that, a certain IQ, for example, will start to work against you in certain fields and vice versa. You have a thirst for information, great thirst, but information is toxic. The knowledge, it turns against us. And that's a serious problem. And that's the problem of the age of misinformation that we live in. It's not only that the knowledge is toxic even when it's good knowledge. Now we also have bad knowledge, mostly bad knowledge, mostly shitty advice. The combination is lethal, and just people become paralyzed or just, move from link to link to link with a glazy eyes and just never actually do anything.
Yes. I know you advocate building a huge work capacity. So how many hours a day do you think, this is also a debate for specialists, how many hours a day do you think is the most a person can train movement intelligently before it becomes not sustainable, before their mind becomes uninspired, maybe, as you said?
24 hours.
24 hours.
24 hours a day. There is a choreographer in Israel, very known choreographer called Ohad Naarin. He says, when you wake up in the morning in bed between the sheets, you can practice movement. And he's not talking about with your partner.
Yeah.
So even there you can practice, breathing, moving. It's all the time around you. But serious practice, practice oriented that, repetition and success and building skill and moving from isolation to integration to improvisation. In most disciplines, it's around 6 to 8 hours a day. Some people go more and reach even the 10-hour mark, and I've done that for periods of time. In the military, you go even further than that. Other disciplines require less, and it's also a highly individual thing. So let's say even within the sports of gymnastics, you have a woman like Nastya who trains 8 hours a day, and next to her in the same team, also winning gold medals, at the same level, more or less, you have Shawn Johnson training 3 hours a day. And she reached the top of her field, gold medal in the Olympics.